To meet God on a typical Sunday in colonial Ghana, natives were required to dress in clothing that did not suit them. Black suits, white long-sleeved shirts, neckties, and white overall dresses. For the congregants, black gowns with white collarettes, white shirts, and, if lucky, polished black shoes. For ordained ministers and the fortunate clergyman, all while enduring the tropical conditions marked by the blazing sunrise. And when it was singing time, the music conductor, who also doubled as the preacher, would call the congregation to rounds of singing European hymns. These hymns were usually slow-paced, lifeless tunes, the kind of songs sung at funerals. And to make matters worse, the African congregation were largely illiterate in English and could hardly sing the hymns whose lyrics were in English. To resolve this language barrier to the practice of Christianity in colonial Ghana, an African, a trained teacher-cum-catechist, working as a music composer, took on the burden of his people and translated the English hymns into Ghanaian languages. In a 1993 interview with the BBC's Alice Martin at his residence in Peki in Ghana's Volta region, Amu recounted the story of his genius. Listen now to the living voice of the 1899-born Ghanaian musical aficionado.
You were someone who was closely associated, at least, with introducing African music instead of European music into the church. Could you describe how that began, how you started?
Well, I as a preacher, whenever conducting services, I found that when the hymn was announced and we were singing, you would see that only the literate people were singing. The illiterate were not singing. Just because, not because they hadn't any voice, they had the voice, but the singing was strange to them. So I felt that they were being denied something. And therefore, to make them also participate in singing, which is very important at service, I feel that our hymns should be written in our way of singing. I remember when we were going to sing the first song that I composed in Twi. Onipa da uhusu, man be on your guard. It has 3 verses. Now, it was announced at the church that the students would sing. And so we stood. And I stood on the little platform that I stood on, which was placed near the entrance of the church, so that if whilst we were singing, someone came forward to push me out, I could slip out without causing any commotion in the church. So we started. We sang the first verse, and nobody came forward. We sang the second verse, nobody came forward. But there was absolute quiet in the room. And then we sang the third verse, and nothing happened. And I wondered what was happening.
Amu's first song was a success, but in general his ideas were considered too radical for their times. One was that he insisted on wearing African cloth in church instead of the black European costume worn by other catechists and preachers. He was never ordained as a result.
When the church service was over and I stepped out of the chapel, the first person I met was an elderly minister called Peter Hall. He was himself the moderator of our church for some time, but was a retired minister, but still taking active part in church affairs. And so they called me to the meeting and questioned me why it was that I wore cloth to preach. And I asked them to point out what was wrong in wearing cloth to preach. However, I explained to them all the reasons and said that I couldn't obtain permission from them because I knew they wouldn't grant the permission. And so this elderly minister said, "Look, we know how very active you are and also very zealous, and we believe that not very long, it wouldn't take very long for you to become one of us. That means for me to be ordained as a minister." And of course, it was the practice that a catechist should be married before he was ordained a minister. That is to guard against his sexual matters. And I said it wasn't that, but that what was needed was self-discipline. And therefore that a young man, also as a married man, both of them need self-control. And I wanted to discipline myself, to make them see that discipline is the necessary thing.
Away from Amu's composition of music in Ghanaian languages, to bridge the language barrier, he would go on to add some groove to what was otherwise dead European singing. He introduced Ghanaian cultural elements into church music. Percussions like drums, rattles, and bells, and supersonic rhythms became inseparable from Ghanaian church culture. But following multiple warnings from Peter Hall and some clergymen, including Africans, to dissuade Amu from preaching clad in African cloth, he stubbornly did not conform, and not long after he was dismissed from the church. But what followed his dismissal from his role as a preacher and catechist in the Presbyterian Church at Akropong was transformative. It dealt a lasting blow to the old order and helped shape what would become today's Ghanaian Christian practice. Go onto the streets of any community in Ghana on a regular Sunday, and you will be taken in by the colorful outpouring of fashionable styles and prints donned by churchgoers of all ages, denominations, and creeds. And during worship segments of many a Ghanaian church service, one is sure to feel the vibrancy of charged Ghanaian rhythms and melodies. Cultural drums and musical instruments fused into Western forms and embraced by the Christian faithful. So if there is ever a thing like a Doa medley, the Agbadza medley, Jama medley, or even High Life medley in the Ghanaian church choral music of today. It is all thanks to Amu, the pioneering figure behind the use of the atent and ben, or bamboo flute, as a melodic instrument, who also invented other instruments like the odorugja and odorojiaba. And as Emeritus Professor J.H. Kwabena Nketia said of him, there is no single individual who has influenced the course of the development of art music in contemporary Ghana as much as Dr. Ephraim Amu. And so, here is an ode to the spirit, soul, and lasting memory of an enduring, radical, practical African Christian, ethnomusicologist, and a national legend in the annals of Ghanaian and indeed African art music. The story is told.
Owura awo fenitien, owura awo tenitien, owura sikanitien, owura yansanitien, ane yepo wura nino kasa ehina yebeuno, yepo wura, owura hina yebeuno, otomakuma wotelko. Owura tapren in siedo, owura peye pio, onipa peye pio, neni ninara, owure, onipa peye pio, neni ninara.